turn.
I never want to speak out of turn.
It's not going to stop me.
Good day and welcome to First World Third Rails. Your host, Marlon Taylor, aka Mayhem, aka Mr. Very Disruptive, with his partner in the shotgun seat, JD, aka JD Wilson.
That's
How you
me.
doing? How you
I'm
doing,
fine.
brother?
I'm fine.
Where are we?
Honey.
Oh man, one of my closest friends on the planet. His birthday is coming up Saturday. I gotta mark that down. My buddy Cliff. We are, what are we now? 58 years?
So you've known him
58 years.
a long time.
We met in kindergarten 58 years ago.
That's really wonderful.
And have been, I love Cliff. He knows that. He loves me. That's a given. He's my boy. He's my boy. I'll have to call him. And we're a week apart in our birthdays. He's Saturday the 15th. I'm the following Saturday.
You know, I just came up with a rhyme. I love him. He loves me. We've known each other since nursery. Although
like
I
it.
guess nursery is different.
I
That
like
would be
it.
before. That's pre-kindergarten, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we met in the nursery,
I
which is 1,000 years ago.
someone, I can't disclose who, someone close to me shared the news. Well, God, I got news coming left and right. How ironic, now that I think about it, a couple people close to me have shared that news. One specifically yesterday shared with me that she is expecting her first.
Oh, wow.
And that prompted a conversation as they were making inquiries about how I went through being a single dad, work at home dad with Calvin. And when did we go to daycare? And I remember I told her, shared with her, daycare was so brutal. One,
Why was it brutal?
because it's, when my son's mom went back to work, I took over
Mm-hmm.
as a stay-at-home, work-at-home dad, and then we went to daycare, and it
Like when you
was
say then you went, you mean after a period of time?
right, right, and then we tried, so I could get back to full focus on work. We went to daycare, and it was just brutal. It was just brutal. Calvin, uh, he hated being separated from his father. And it showed every time I tried to drop him off at daycare. I shared the story that, and this is a true story, back then I was part of a bowling league, and we bowled on Thursday nights, and I literally had to kind of sneak out the back of the house so Calvin wouldn't see me and just start throwing fits, because if he saw me trying to leave, he would throw a fit. I'd have to come back, try and calm him down, and sneak out again, because he hated leaving his father leaving.
Oh, God,
Hated
yeah.
it.
Well, I mean, I can relate. I have a daycare story, but it's a real short story. So, my wife had our first child at the end of, I guess it was 6 weeks maternity leave.
Yep.
We made the necessary arrangements. We put him in daycare. We took him the first day, and he was a little fella, so he didn't really know what was going on. And a little later that day, he's at daycare now, and my wife calls me and she says, I can't take it. I said, what do you mean, honey? And she said, I can't stand being separated from my son. And she quit work.
Yeah.
So my oldest son was in daycare approximately
6 hours.
4 hours. Yeah, 4 to 6 hours one day. And she took the next decade off and personally raised our boys.
It's hard, man. It's
Oh
hard.
yeah, it was, she was like, I literally I can't take it. And
I
what's
told her,
interesting is that if you think about it, there were some, it's a real cost benefit, because at the point where at the point where she quit working for a decade, she was a rising star,
yep,
making very good money.
yep.
She quit. I was an entrepreneur. We made it work. But the point is that when she took that 10 years off, when she went back into the workforce, she was obligated to go in slightly below where she left.
Where she would have been. Yeah.
And, now she's gone past that, but she took over a decade right out of the middle of her career.
Yep.
And that was the cost, but the benefit is our beautiful sons.
There you go.
So
There you go. I can relate.
I can relate to Calvin. Calvin's like, I hate this.
Oh God.
Yeah,
As I told the person who was seeking my counsel on this, he's crying, he's pitching a fit at the daycare. I'm crying in the car because he's crying. It was just a mess, man. And
I can't give any advice on this because we immediately succumbed. We lasted 4 hours and broke.
it was tough. It was tough. But you work through and you do what you got to do.
Well, what advice did you give him? I mean, were you able to actually conjure? It's not a challenge. I think it would be fascinating to actually hear something that would make this.
The only piece of advice, the longer you can go before you have to go the daycare route, the better. Now, it makes it harder, but the more you have the parent care versus daycare, the better for the child. Obvious. And I talked with her about different generations, because my daycare, I grew up Catholic. So my daycare was through someone who was affiliated with St. Francis on Rhode Island Avenue Rectory, Church and Rectory. And my parents loved my daycare provider because she was as old and mean and ornery as my parents were. So they love that fact. Yeah, this is what he needs. Give her to him. She'll beat the hell out of him and keep him in line. And she sure as hell did. Because woo. But without that, I wouldn't have gotten the foundation that I had. And I know that day is gone, but that's why I'm sitting in this chair.
Well, it was really interesting because we bought our house. I lost my job. I started my company. Our son was born. But it was really nice. We made it through, obviously, and it was really nice because we would walk them together. At first, it was just
right.
And 3 years later, it was both boys, and all four of us would walk to the school, which is 4 houses across the street. You're at the school, so we walked them to 1st through 6th grades. For 6 years, 9 years, including the second child. And then they walked off to middle school on their own.
Which is very different than how we were raised. Get your ass out the door. Boom.
Number 70, as I recall. And the bus was actually good. I enjoyed the good. I enjoyed the bus. I had a great neighborhood. But then I ended up starting to walk because I like to walk through the woods and
get your ass out the door. Boom.
Boom. Well, no, actually people are more helicopter parenting now than they used to.
Oh, of course. Yeah. We didn't have that in my day. That's my point.
Oh, okay. Oh, I wonder if that would have been qualified. It was definitely safe and nurturing. I don't think we've been accused of being helicopter parents.
I'm talking about our parents, not us.
Our parents.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
not
I'm flipped. Okay,
that's not
you're right.
how
My
we
parents
were.
are like, you're out.
Yeah,
Go.
get the hell out the door. Boom.
And in my mom's case, she's like, don't come back.
Right, right, right. You here again? What are you doing?
It's more like,
Uh,
who the hell are you?
it's a different world now. And I understand that. I respect that. Uh, I don't think I'm going to be a grandfather anytime soon, as my son knows he needs to work on some things before. I saw this. God, I can't remember who it was on Twitter. I think it was Juliet Kayyem of CNN. Uh, her family was going to she wasn't going, but her family was going. She has kids and her husband. They were all going somewhere to some camp or something. And she made the comment that she asked her son if he needed to have the lecture. And I almost wanted to respond to her and said, I can so relate to that question, because when Calvin was young,
But
this
Julia
was
Kayyem is white, right?
yeah,
Is it the same lecture or a different lecture?
or whatever she is, huh?
Is it the
No, it's
same?
the same. The parent lecture, the sex birds and bees lecture
Oh, birds and bees. Okay, because
is the same regardless of what color you are. And I remember when I first had it with Calvin. He was in his teens, and it was his first trip ever, solo. And he flew down to California to see his best friend who now lives here. And he called me up to tell me he was going down to see her. And he said, Dad, would you do me a favor? Would you take me to the airport? Because if Mom takes me, she's going to cry. That's going to make me cry. And we'll just be at the airport crying, and I probably won't even be able to get on the plane. So would you take me? Because I know you won't cry. And so I'm like, sure, I'll drive you down. So we're headed down to SeaTac. And I go, do we need to have the talk? And he's thinking, oh God, here it comes. And I go, no, if we need to have, if you don't remember it, we need to have it, we can have it while we're on the drive down to the airport. Okay, let's have the talk. And for those listening, and for everybody out there, here's Marlon Taylor's Birds and Bees speech and lecture. Any idiot can make a baby. It takes a man to be a father. That's it.
bada bing, bada boom.
That's it.
Is there a semicolon in there or a period?
Period.
Any idiot can make a baby, semicolon. It takes a man to be a father.
Yes.
Period.
Period. That's it.
That's it?
And that resonated with him to this day. To this day. Because I remember he was over not too long ago, and Ellen was grilling him about his relationship and all of those things, and he's just like, look, I'm not ready yet. And so that told me, that lecture still resonates to this day. Now, when you feel you're ready, go pull the trigger. But understand, it takes a man to be a father.
My boys aren't sure about kids.
Oh, I think Calvin will happily do that.
When they look around the world, they're like, I think
Yeah, it's scary.
I think
scary.
they'd like to have children, but that they're not campaigning for them yet, and it's possible that they would pass given the circumstances.
It's scary, man. It's a scary, it's a blessing, but
Fundamentally, it's a fairness question, and it seems entirely possible to have a good life from the years, what are we in 2023?
yes.
So let's say for purposes of discussion, in the 100 years from 2030 to 3030. That's going to be a That's gonna be a tough ass century. I mean, that's gonna be.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So,
'Cause
I'm
we
gonna,
may be
yeah,
under a dictatorship by then.
possible. Yeah, actually, it's entirely possible. When you go out that far, entirely possible.
Yep,
So I'll be dead before 2050, for sure, for
yep,
sure.
yep.
My sons will go through the end of this century, so they're gonna live to 2100, barring
I
some
gotta,
unforeseen circumstance.
I gotta ask that this weekend.
What's that?
Honey, would you rather be buried or cremated? And I'm like,
Cremated.
I'm trying to watch the freaking ball game here.
Yeah, it's an easy answer. I would rather be cremated. I don't need to think about it.
I don't, I'm like, look, I ain't even thinking about that. I know I've got a birthday coming up, but I ain't thinking about that right now.
What prompted the question?
I don't know.
But was
I
it
can't
the
even-
"you're still here" question? I want to bury your raggedy ass.
It's been 21 long. I've maintained that that's how it's going to go. One of us is going to bury the other in the backyard, keep the checks coming as long as we can.
Sounds reasonable. I'm older than my wife. I'm about 5 years older than my wife, and I'm going to try to go as long as she does. So I have to be really healthy. I'm hoping that we'll be able to kind of narrow the gap. I don't want to go 5 years plus the delta between men and women. That would be like 7 years. I don't want her to go 7 years without me. Maybe why would I say that? I can't volunteer that. I mean,
one of my
I can't wait to get out.
one of my friends in DC just lost his wife. They were together 43 years.
Wow.
It's a long time, brother.
Yeah, we just celebrated 29.
And I talked to the mutual best friend that I have, which is how I know him. And he said he was really good up until, that moment when the casket closes and it becomes real.
You know what?
On a positive, on a good note, on a good,
Do you have a decent third rail that we can argue about?
on a good note,
I'm getting all maudlin here, like.
on a good note, swinging
Yes.
back in the other direction.
Yeah, see if you can recover us.
I can recover us. The last time, it's going to take me a minute though.
right.
The last time I
your
was just sharing this story. Literally, I've got a phone call I got to make later today. The last time I was home being Washington D.C. was 7 years ago for a funeral of my best friend. My best friend's two children, who are both adult now, the male, and for the record, Uncle Marlon is the greatest ever. The male just broke up in his relationship, and he's going through some really, really, as you know, relationship breakups can be hard.
Is that the gentleman who's trying to get back to California?
Yeah. And so I called him and talked to him, gave him some rock solid sound advice on how to navigate through to get yourself to a point where you're going to meet somebody in your future and you're going to be the hope for that person that you don't know that you're going to meet in your future. That's always my counsel. His sister, however, her birthday is today. And I sent her a text wishing her a happy birthday. And she said that her brother, who I just talked to 48 hours ago, shared the news that she is expecting baby number 2.
That's how we started this, right?
Yep.
So let's
Really,
celebrate the reality in the present,
yes.
then concern ourselves with the future in the future.
I'm not concerned about the future. I'm on the Charles
I'm
Barkley.
not concerned in the present about the future. I'm concerned about the future in the future at such time as it is.
I'm on the Charles Barkley plan where I will just, like Charles, will just drop dead, do with us what you want.
Cremate. So why would you not want to be cremated, or have you not made up your mind?
I don't care. Am I going to care?
Well, you have to make it. Don't you have to like decide beforehand? So people know what to do with your raggedy ass?
Throw my ass out in the backyard, bury him. I don't care.
All right.
Put me on the grill. Put me on the grill and spread my ashes through the neighborhood. I don't
It was
care.
okay with the, yeah, and bury me in the backyard.
The hell am I gonna care about it, man? I'm gone.
All right. So if we ever got a viewer, we just scared them off. What else is going on?
That viewer might see things my way going, hey, Marlon's on to something there.
He's on to something. Man.
Kind of like weddings, right? It's the same thing as weddings, man.
How so? I mean,
Weddings are wedding in the sense that this generation, I think, fully understands, is it worth I've been divorced twice.
is it worth what? You're about to say this generation understands, is it worth
The wedding and the expenses behind
the
weddings.
expenses? Okay. Oh, the expenses of a funeral, of a wedding, all of these things we spend money on.
They've come to the reality that it's just not what. My first wedding had 350 people. You know how much that wedding cost? And that was in 80s.
Well, I'm assuming it was at least $10 a person.
And I didn't have a limo
$20
at that
a
wedding.
person.
I had a horse-drawn carriage.
Wow. We're talking $50 a person, right?
Yeah, thank you.
We
And of
just
course-
rented a bed and breakfast, and everybody who was close family stayed at the bed and breakfast, and we
There
had
you
dinner.
go. There you
It
go.
was actually great. We had really good food.
There you go.
I remember as clear as yesterday, my beautiful wife coming through the door. And I remember as clear as a bell when her daughter from a previous marriage, who was the ring bearer, she dropped the ring.
Oops.
It was an old house. It was actually on the Freedom Trail. It was part of the Underground Railroad. So it was a really old, farmhouse.
So not an expensive 350 person Catholic wedding.
No, I think we
There
probably
you
had
go.
30 odd people, and most of them were close.
There you go.
But that ring hit the oak floor. Bong.
Oh, yeah.
And there's another thing I remember about that. My brother-in-law was recording it, and he recorded everything from here down.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Oh God, I'm everybody is relieved for two reasons: that we are all now married and done. Because
Done and dusted, people.
yes, because there are certain situations Marlon knows how to act. There are certain situations Marlon does not know how to act. And weddings and wedding receptions were certainly one of those. I've been barred from two things permanently for life: pool parties and wedding receptions.
Is this pre or post open bar?
It's always been open bar.
There you go. There you go, ladies.
It's
and gentlemen.
always been open bar.
Another explanation.
My friend Beasley got married. I was still married. This was my first marriage. It was within that first year of my first marriage. And I bought the reception party out to my house, Bailey's Crossroads.
Hey, Marlon, I want you to pick that story up again. Your first wedding reception, your friend Beasley, right? But you're calling it your first wedding. So
I've been married twice. I've been
You've
married
married
twice.
twice. Okay.
Calvin's mother.
Well, this is really interesting. It's there's no question that you've talked about it before, but for some reason it's registering now. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Wow. I think you've mentioned the 350 people, but I wasn't actually.
That's a lot of people for a wedding.
Yeah, but now, did I meet your first wife? I don't think so.
I don't believe you did.
We met towards the end?
After.
Okay. That would explain it. That would explain it.
After. Because of course I was only married about a New York minute, but that's a whole nother story.
Wow. So you've been married twice.
Yep.
And you've been with the love of your life
21 years. She is currently trying to get a passport under a different name and flee the country after 20. After
Yeah, my wife was previously married, so I have a.
I said, honey, she went to get her hair done yesterday. I was like, honey, are you going to stay in the city or are you coming back? And she's like, I'm never coming back.
Well, I interrupted. You were about to tell the story about your friend Beasley, and then I have a question for you.
Oh, I invited the wedding party to my house to Bailey's Crossroads, and the following morning, long story short, this is why I'm banned from throwing wedding receptions or attending them. The following morning, I woke up naked on top of my kitchen counter, and my tuxedo was in the tree outside the house.
Okay,
All of my
well,
clothes
that's a nice
were.
arrangement. I'm glad you weren't in the tree. Did you say Bailey's Crossroads?
Yes.
Do you remember Skyline Towers?
Yeah, of course I do.
I lived on the 17th floor of Skyline Towers and I loved it.
I dated a woman who lived above that floor.
Oh, well, of course you did. Isn't it? It was so cool up there. I loved it up there. And they had absolutely huge, huge balconies. And I actually courted my wife there. So we would sit and just, it faced west. We weren't on the inside, we were on the outside facing west, looking toward the Shenandoah. I love that. I really liked that. That was great.
The other, putting a bow on that, the other thing I'm barred from is pool parties. I'm no longer allowed to attend pool parties. I don't know how to behave.
Because you can't swim?
No, I'm an excellent swimmer, as you know. I just don't. Behaving is the issue, not swimming.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Kind of it's not a third rail, but
it's close enough.
When I first met my wife, she was very unhappy with men.
Yeah.
Because she was.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm going too far around the bend to say that it wounded her. It hurt her.
Of course. Relationships do that.
And I think it carries forward. It seems to hurt if you've been divorced. And it took me a while to understand this because I put absolutely no weight on it whatsoever. In other words, I can understand why you might get divorced. I haven't been divorced, but I can certainly, understand it. I didn't get married until I was older.
Right.
Are you still wounded by divorce?
No.
Excellent. I don't think divorced people should be, but that's just an opinion and a hope. Doesn't change reality.
What's the one thing you and I, for the benefit of our viewers, what's the one thing you and I consistently for 35 years have said about each other? We are somehow cosmically connected.
Yeah, it's been a curious state of affairs.
This is another exact example of that. I literally just had this conversation during my
stigma associated with
during my up notch session. I literally just had this conversation that, to answer your question, no, not wounded from the divorce, but I still carry the wounds from how I was impacted with Calvin. Follow me?
I do.
And my counsel or conversation with this individual, you've heard me say this before, and I've said this to everybody who would ever listen. Our past is the foundation of who we are today.
True.
So you can't leave things like divorce in the past because it's part of who we are. You have to find and figure out ways to bring the negative, divorce, health, whatever, job losses. You have to figure out a way to bring the negative past forward in a positive light because it's part of your DNA and foundation of who you are. So the trick and the key is, how do I bring it forward and have it represent value versus hurt? And that's always a
That's saying
challenge.
a mouthful. Is there a way?
I believe that there is. I believe, and here's why I believe that there is. As I was having this conversation with this individual, I shared with him that one of, my circle of six, one of which is now 2 years into his divorce. And I say to him consistently that I represent the future that can be. His wife, ex-wife now he has two sons, and they were adult when this all transpired. Very different than my son being 3 when it transpired. So there's a huge difference there. But his ex-wife tried and is trying and will continue to try to hurt him financially, right? And so he's a long way from being where I am today. And where I am today, full disclosure to all one listener, viewer, when I see Calvin's mom today, we are literally on a hugging basis. And no one ever would have thought that possible 15,
Well, you
18.
return to your original relationship. I mean, the
Yes,
elements
because,
that brought you together originally have now survived.
well, the whatever you want to label it, the anger, bitterness, whatever that is, that's in focus front and center during that divorce, that has now shifted into another energy. And once that shifts to a different energy, you have the foundation and pathway to put back together a working relationship, if you will. They're not there yet, but I'm the example of what could be once those energies start to get channeled in another direction. Because
That
I was the O.J. Simpson of Seattle, right? And so no one ever thought, with how hurt I was in trying to strip me of my parental rights from my son, no one ever thought we would ever be in a space where we are today. Ever.
well, what happened to you was profoundly unfair.
Yes,
And
it was. And my counsel to all those who might be on that path or one day be on that path, and I told this story during the session that I just mentioned my friend who's 2 years into his divorce. His older brother is like my older brother. And of all the communication I got when I went through that very unfair period of my life, his was the most significant and profound. He called me up. I was living in an extended stay hotel. So you know what that's like. All of a sudden I'm homeless, penniless, everything. He called me up and said, Marlon, I know you're hurting. I know you're hurting. Because he had been divorced. So he knew. And I need you to stand tall and stand strong. I know you're doing it for your son because I know that's the kind of man that you are. But that's not why I'm calling you and asking you to stand tall and stand strong. I'm asking you to do it because somewhere down the line, you're going to run into someone who's going through the very same thing you are. And the only hope that person is going to have is you. It was as if he had a view into the future, because not even a year after having that conversation and that phone call, I ended up, as you know, at Microsoft. I met someone at Microsoft in the Chicago area, single, one son, bad, bitter divorce. And we became friends before the divorce happened. And then the divorce happened, and she came back to me probably 3-4 months after the divorce and everything had dust had cleared. And she said, Marlon, of all the people in my life, family and friends, the most impactful communication and advice that I ever got came from you. And so that made me quickly pivot back to that phone call saying, you got to stand tall because you're going to be the hope for somebody that you don't even know and haven't even met yet.
Well, it's really interesting because just a few minutes ago, you made reference to your first marriage, and I needed to do a mental jog. So when you've known somebody for a long time, you may have been exposed to stuff and you don't catalog it, or you catalog it and it's lost, and you revisit it.
Yep.
One of the things I'm noticing in this conversation is at least 3, possibly 4 times the salve or the remedy or the technique, however you want to characterize it, to deal with the present is to imagine the future. So your brother did that for you. You referenced it early in conversation with your son.
Yep.
And here is somebody else. That's
Yep.
3 specific instances of
Yep.
advice that actually projected the future or imagined the future and how
Yep.
it could be different than the present. Which on reflection, I'm realizing you do that a lot, but it's not a formula. It's just, it's part of what makes you so valuable as a friend. Is there is a future, you help people see the future, imagine the future, and that diminishes the crush of the present.
Yes. And I subscribe to the philosophy, Dallas Cowboys aside.
How does he do it?
Dallas Cowboys aside, the past is the past. You can't change the past. So I subscribe to the philosophy that you continue to put one foot in front of the other. I used to say to Calvin all the time, every day, every sunrise isn't guaranteed. But if you get that sunrise, if you're blessed enough to get that sunrise, you get up, you walk through the next door. You continue that focus, you continue that journey, and you walk through enough doors, you will find the path that will bring you peace or whatever you're looking for.
All right. So can't change the past, but the past changes you. And if you carry it forward, I guess it continues
In a positive way.
Because we started off on this was the concept of having been divorced, and then my own experience with my wife.
Yep.
Whom I adore. I mean, she is absolutely my North Star in every sense of the word. But sometimes she's not. I can tell it crosses her mind that we could end, and I can't imagine it, but she can.
I can't. There's no way I can ever envision Ellen and I not being together. The one thing I consistently say to her, and it's because of Ellen, let's not, because it's no picnic being with me. The one thing I say to her all the time that I think really, really resonates, because she is of the belief that nobody on the planet wants to be alone, except you, Marlon, because you like being alone.
I think that's a fair assessment, given a choice.
Yeah.
There are times when you're obligated to be alone, and if somebody said you could move into this situation and you wouldn't be alone, you're like, that's not the ideal situation, so I'll remain.
Right.
But I think given a choice and an opportunity with the right person.
Marlon aside, most people don't want to be alone.
Why would you decide yourself? Are you just joking?
Well, she firmly believes that I don't care. And that's because of 2 divorces and all that stuff.
Hold on. You just lost me.
How so?
I asked you I asked if you were joking, and you doubled down. Marlon doesn't care. I didn't follow that. I didn't track that.
Let me see if I can clear it up for you.
Okay.
I can't ever envision not being with her.
I like that part. That part I understood.
But if something happened and a situation was created, God forbid that we weren't, I would never be in another relationship. I would be alone from that point going forward.
You're saying that, or she's saying that?
I'm saying.
Forgive me, I don't believe you.
She would come on camera right now and tell you, oh, he has no problem being alone.
Well, I don't have any problem being alone either, but I'm naturally inclined to be with somebody. And
I've been
I
there,
really
done it,
think you are
been
as
to
well.
that movie more times than I care to go to that movie, and something transpired. I always
Joking. Okay.
I always say, God forbid if anything ever happened and you and I weren't together, my relationships going forward would all be financial. Money's on the nightstand. Have a good trip. See, and it's the
So
truth.
now, okay, did you just identify a latent stigma from having been divorced twice?
Pretty much, yeah.
So there you go.
Now, having said all that, the one thing I do say to her consistently, all this, every single time, and it usually comes up if she goes and stays down in the city for a night. It always comes up if she happens to go down. She doesn't do that during the summer because her place is an oven. But if she were to go down, stay in the city, and come back the following night, like she may do tonight or tomorrow, but I think she's going to Uber back and forth to the events that she's got scheduled tonight, tomorrow, birthday celebrations. I say to her every single time, all the time, when you're not here, this house is not a home.
Well, I think everybody understands that.
It's only a home when you're here.
I think everybody understands that.
I don't think everybody understands that. I don't think everybody understands that. In fact, I know everybody doesn't understand that because I see some of her reality TV shows, and of course, reality TV shows isn't reality, but
Well, the people on this call understand that.
the people on this call,
people here understand that.
You better believe that. And I'm sure we've got a lot of listeners or viewers, if they were listening to this, would relate to that. It's only, and it has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with them. It's only this house is a home when Ellen is here. When she's not here, and the thing that mind boggles her, and when I say mind boggles, I mean mind boggles. If she spends a night away, and especially when she used to travel, and she will come back, and I will go, honey, yes, while you were gone, I watched the game, but it's not the same when you're not here. And Ella goes, I just do not understand that. Because when I'm here, I zone out everything and I don't even know what's going on. So how is it a different experience when I'm not here? And I'm like, it's just different. It's just different. It's not the same.
Yeah.
So I can't ever imagine the longest relationship I've ever had in my entire life by double. And I can't ever imagine us in a situation where we aren't together.
I've been in 3 major relationships. The first one about 7 years, not quite. Second one about 7 years, not quite. The third one about 7 years, and then we got married.
You remember Joe, don't you?
They've all been great. Remember who?
Joe.
Joe. Your girl.
Yes.
Now, see, we were just getting acquainted, I think. I don't have a vivid. We were just getting acquainted. I don't remember.
No,
It's running together.
I met Joe at GTSI.
Yeah.
GTSI was after Riverbend.
I don't.
Oh, no. You're right.
Okay.
GTSI was before Riverbend.
I was starting to sweat. I'm like,
no. You're right.
In other words, I would not expect to have picture perfect recall.
Riverbend.
Really
Riverbend was after GTSI. You're right.
Thank God.
You're right. GTSI was the second computer company I worked for. MathBox.
You were at
MathBox being the first.
GTSI, right?
I'm sorry?
Was it Cicerex you were at?
Sizerex.
And then GTSI?
No.
The other way.
It was the other way. MathBox.
Okay. And then I met you after both of those.
You met me at Riverbend, which was
after both of those.
No, Sizerex was the last one because Sizerex is where I met Calvin's mom.
Well, that
So,
That's what I was saying. I was saying, as I recall, Sizer X was after GTSI.
yes, but
You know, I'm actually acquitting myself pretty well here.
Riverbend, yeah, you are. Riverbend was in between GTSI and Sizer X.
Oh,
Sizer X was the
I'm
last.
catching up now.
Sizer X was the last company I worked for prior to moving to Seattle.
Got it. All right. So now
Sizer X is the reason I actually moved to Seattle.
it's starting to make sense, but I hope there won't be a quiz.
No. That's why I ended up here. We held a government microcomputer contract that our illustrious CEO, Harvard
That was when
grad.
you shaved your head when you went out there, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to connect the dots.
I remember like it was yesterday. Carlton called me into his
Oh,
office
35 years ago.
and said, Marlon, I need you to go. And, you know, I had technical foundation. He said, I need you to go to Seattle and conduct a week-long test on a bias chip with 20 or 30 internal
that was a good story. I like that.
Internal Revenue Service agents. And so that was my
the mother
flew
of
out. Yep. Flew out here and
I
fell
remember
in
back when we worked together. I was with my son and we were driving by a customer that I had at Riverbend called Spot Image, which I think is long gone. I'm not sure, but I said I sold to those guys. And in other words, if I go down Sunrise Valley or Sunset, whatever it is, I had a bunch of customers along there. But here I am with my son. Obviously, he was not yet a gleam in the eye when I sold those accounts. So, God, all of life's a circle.
I tell people all the time, the very first time, you'll appreciate this. The very first time, because my first computer company job was out in Centerville, Virginia, Route 28 was one lane each way. How far back is that?
That is really incredible.
And
Four-lane highway now, right?
what is Route 20?
The north-south one?
Yes. And what is Route 28 today? 6 lanes on each side.
Yeah, it's a 4-lane superhighway going both ways. And when you add on the merge and the exits, in some places it's 6 lanes.
Yes. And I talk about that as you know, I'm interviewing. I talk about that in my interviews. I talk about that. My very first computer company, because I had zero computer skills.
There's a little bit of ageism in the world.
Zero computer skills.
My first job.
and I remember being in that interview and saying, look, are you going to interview others that have more skills and better knowledge about the computer industry than me? Of course you are. But what they don't.
Oh, you said, of course you are?
Yeah.
I was just shaking my head. No, I'm like, who could know?
No, I told them, of course you are. Are you going to interview people who know this industry and technology better than me? Yes, 100%. What you're not going to have, though, is anyone that comes through that door with the work ethic that I have. And when I said that to the hiring manager, I could see the wheels. I could see him saying, you know what? I'm going to call this guy's bluff. And he hired me. No skills, no experience. He hired me.
Oh, we're mixing time slots here. So you're in the past now.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm caught up to you. I thought we were talking about your current endeavors. You're talking
No.
Way back on Route 28.
Centerville, Virginia,
which
first
is one
job.
Lane. All right. So we're going back in time.
No history, no skill sets, no experience with PC computing. And he hired me based on that statement.
He hired your raggedy ass based on that statement.
They hired my raggedy ass into their service department doing parts inventory. Because back then, remember, that was the boom of the IBM clone.
Oh my God, the stuff we used to do. Oh
yes.
My God.
So he hired me into that role. 45 days in, the director of system integration came over to the service department and said, I want Marlon Taylor to join our team in system integration. And that was the beginning of the end, my friend. Another one of my infamous resignation moments in my work history. I
Are
have
you
one.
from GTSI?
I
Or-
have one with you, and I have one that was
Well,
my
we didn't
first.
resign. We were fired.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
still. It
So
was
what's the bad
still.
news, right? Yeah, I
It
remember.
was still an infamous moment, and Mathbox Incorporated was my first infamous moment when we were over a 4th of July weekend. So this would be 40 years ago this past weekend. We were more than 40 years ago, maybe 50. We were doing inventory because that's what you did when you were a clone builder. You had all this inventory because you got to build shit, right?
I remember all that.
And the inventory counts were coming up off. And so people came out from Rockville corporate offices. And I remember they pulled everybody into the warehouse. I remember this like it was yesterday. Pulled everybody into the warehouse, and they said in this big speech, the inventory counts are still coming up off. I don't give a damn if it's a holiday weekend. I don't give a damn if it's Christmas. We're going to stay here. We're going to count and recount until we get it right. Does anybody have any questions? One hand went up.
What was your question?
Can I get a box to pack my shit up and get, because I'm out of here.
Oh, you left?
May I have a box to pack up my shit? I'm done. Guy walks up to me, black guy walks up to me from corporate. He said, man, I want to shake your hand. And I said, shake my hand. He said, listen, I don't know who the hell you were before today, but today you are my hero. And I walked out the door, packed up, walked out the door, and went to GTSI.
Well, you know what? I think you should take us out on that.
That's a good take her out on it.
That's a good wrap right there. I like that.
The old days of personal,
take it out.
The old days of personal computing, my friend. That I love what you said there as I take us out. People, especially this generation, have no idea what we used to do for a living and to earn money in this industry. Not a clue. Not a clue.
There was a lot more physical stuff.
Floppy disk drive. What are you talking about?
A lot more physical stuff. Now a lot of it's digital.
Everything is digital.
So it's a lot of typing and coding and
everything is digital.
I really enjoy it.
Do they even make PCs anymore?
I make my own, so there you go.
Okay. Yeah, I would imagine they have servers.
I was out this morning on my motherboard manufacturer's website downloading drivers. So yeah,
that's right. PCs are playing a role in the gaming industry. I forgot about that. And then obviously
they're playing a role in AI too, because
yes.
I needed to put a special GPU in to support my local AI.
And even though everything is rack mounted now, servers still play a role, obviously.
Well, mine are actually, I really got lucky because I had just an Intel Core 5 that met all my needs for programming and everything. And then,
is that what I have? That's what I have, an Intel Core 5 on my laptop.
Yeah, well, my boys, I bought them Intel Core 7s with solid state drives and lots of RAM and beautiful graphic cards. Paid good money for that, and they loved them for about 8 years. And then they went out and they bought themselves the next generation, and they gave me their old ones. So now I have two identical Intel Core 7s, and they're actually serving me well for artificial intelligence.
The most, as I'll take us out on this one, the most powerful compute power I have in my home is literally my Xbox.
Your Xbox, yeah.
That processor is insane, man. Oh God, don't even get me started.
It's too bad Call of Duty is going to go in the crapper.
Everything Microsoft touches dies. I've already sent tweets to my boys. There's a Twitter account that I follow, and they are ripping Microsoft this morning because
it's not Microsoft, it's the Federal Trade Commission.
Nah, they're ripping Microsoft because the PC gamers are experiencing a multitude of problems this morning on the new. They just yesterday.
Is it a denial of service attack?
No. Yesterday they did the relaunch of season 4 of Call of Duty. So there's some there's a lot of new stuff in the relaunch that's not working. And Microsoft, right or wrong, is getting the blame for that not working.
All right, well, take us out on that then.
Taking us out on that.
Looping around again.
Taking us out on that. We're
All right,
on,
bud.
what are we on? We're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're on Spoutable, we're not on Threads. Who the hell knows? We'll revisit Threads when we have the measuring contest results. But we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we're on Spoutable. Find us, like us, hate us, love us, comment on us, but most of all, most importantly, please subscribe to us.
All right, bud.
First world, third rails. We'll catch you on the other side.
Absolutely. Have a
Thank
great
you,
one.
brother. You too.
Bye.
Bye.